This hour on WMNH is proudly sponsored by CGI Business Solutions, located at 171 Londonderry Turnpike in Hooksett. Serving all your employee benefits planning, design and administration, investment and wealth management, and customized business insurance solutions. They are available at 866-841-4600 or on the web at cgibusinesssolutions.com.
You are listening to WMNHLP, Manchester's radio, broadcasting at 95.3 megahertz frequency modulation from the top of 1000 Elm Street. Our studios are located at 1045 Elm Street and licensed to Manchester Public Television Service in Manchester, New Hampshire, USA.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on WMNH 95.3 FM, emanating from downtown Manchester, streaming at WMNHradio.org. Check out the new site, by the way, WMNHradio.org. It looks really cool. Definitely a big upgrade, and I love it. Of course, you can watch on Channel 97 Comcast if you're in Manchester, and via Facebook on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And today is Thursday, September 27th, 2018, and we're diving right in quick. No fun song parodies today or anything like that, because there is so much to do, so much to discuss. And in fact, right now, so he finished his statement a few minutes ago, and now he's answering questions for the Senate Judiciary Committee. So what we're going to do is, and by he I mean Brett Kavanaugh. So let's go to that. I'm not sure how long this is going to last, but I do want to listen to a little bit of this. And if it's if it's not particularly interesting or there's too many, hey, can you stop and read this and then answer it and whatnot, we'll skip it. But this is happening live in real time. So let's give this a sample. I mean, if it were on the statement, if you were still giving a statement, I definitely would have just left it on there. But let's at least give a sample to the question and answer session and kind of get a vibe in terms of what's going on. And phone line is open, 603-250-6007. And like I said, there's much to do. Dianne Feinstein is questioning him right now, so let's go to that.
I've asked the FBI to investigate their claims. I listened carefully to what you said. Your concern is evident and clear. And if you're very confident of your position, and you appear to be, why aren't you also asking the FBI to investigate these claims?
Senator, I'll do whatever the committee wants. I wanted a hearing the day after the allegation came up. I wanted to be here that day. Instead, 10 days passed where all this nonsense is coming out. You know, that I'm in gangs, I'm on boats in Rhode Island, I'm in Colorado, I'm cited all over the place. And these things are printed and run breathlessly by cable news. I wanted a hearing the next day. My family's been destroyed by this, Senator. Destroyed. And whoever wants, whatever the committee decides, I'm all in immediately. I'm all in immediately.
No. And the terrible and hard part of this is when we get an allegation, we're not in a position to prove it or disprove it. Therefore, we have to depend on some outside authority for it. And it just seemed to me then when these allegations came forward that you would want the FBI to investigate those claims and clear it up once and for all.
Senator, the committee investigates. It's not for me to say how to do it, but just so you know, the FBI doesn't reach a conclusion. They would give you a couple 302s that just tell you what we said. So I'm here. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be here the next day. It's an outrage that I was not allowed to come and immediately defend my name and say I didn't do this and give you all this evidence. I'm not even in D.C. on the weekends in the summer of 1982. This happened on a weekday? Well, when I'm not at a Blair High School for a summer league game? I'm not at Tobin's house working out? I'm not at a movie with Suzanne? I wanted to be here right away.
Well, the difficult thing is that these hearings are set and set by the majority. But I'm talking about getting the evidence and having the evidence looked at. And I don't understand, we hear from the witnesses, but the FBI isn't interviewing them and isn't giving us any facts. So all we have.
You're interviewing me. You're interviewing me. You're doing it, Senator. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're doing it. There's no conclusions reached.
And what you're saying, if I understand it, is that the allegations by Dr. Ford, Ms. Ramirez, and Ms. Swetnick are wrong.
Yeah, that is emphatically what I'm saying. Emphatically. The Swetnick thing is a joke. That is a farce.
Would you like to say more about it?
No.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Mitchell.
Dr. Ford has described you as being intoxicated at a party. Did you consume alcohol during your high school years?
Yes, we drank beer. My friends and I, the boys and girls, yes, we drank beer. I liked beer, still like beer. We drank beer. The drinking age, as I noted, was 18, so the seniors were legal. Senior year in high school, people were legal to drink. And we drank beer. And I said sometimes probably had too many beers, and sometimes other people had too many beers. We drank beer. We liked beer.
What do you consider to be too many beers?
I don't know. Whatever the chart says on your blood alcohol chart.
When you talked to Fox News the other night, you said that there were times in high school when people might have had too many beers on occasion. Does that include you?
Sure.
Okay. Have you ever passed out from drinking?
Passed out would be no, but I've gone to sleep, but I've never blacked out. That's the allegation, that's wrong.
So let's talk about your time in high school. In high school, after drinking, did you ever wake up in a different location?
By the way, this is Rachel Mitchell, the sex crimes prosecutor from Maricopa County, Arizona. Just so everyone knows who it is who's speaking. This is not a senator.
Or fewer clothes on than you remembered when you went to sleep or passed out?
No.
Did you ever did anyone ever tell you about something that happened in your presence that you didn't remember during a time that you had been drinking?
No. We drank beer, and so did I think the vast majority of people our age at the time. But in any event, we drank beer and still do. So whatever. Yeah.
During the time in high school when you would be drinking, did anyone ever tell you about something that you did not remember?
No.
Dr. Ford described a small gathering of people at a suburban Maryland home in the summer of 1982. She said that Mark Judge, P.J. Smith, and Leland Ingham also were present, as well as an unknown male, and that the people were drinking to varying degrees. Were you ever at a gathering that fits that description?
No, as I've said in my opening statement.
Dr. Ford described an incident where she was alone in a room with you and Mark Judge. Have you ever been alone in a room with Dr. Ford and Mark Judge?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you were grinding your genitals on her. Have you ever ground or rubbed your genitals against Dr. Ford?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you covered her mouth with your hand. Have you ever covered Dr. Ford's mouth with your hand?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you tried to remove her clothes. Have you ever tried to remove her clothes?
No.
referring back to the definition of sexual behavior that I have given you, have you ever at any time engaged in sexual behavior with Dr. Ford?
No.
Have you ever engaged in sexual behavior with Dr. Ford, even if it was consensual?
No.
I want to talk about your calendars. You submitted to the committee copies of the handwritten calendars that you've talked about for the months of May, June, July, and August of 1982. Do you have them in front of you?
I do.
Did you create these calendars in the sense of all the handwriting that's on them?
Yes.
Okay. Is it exclusively your handwriting?
Yes.
When did you make these entries?
In 1982.
Has anything been changed for those since 1982?
No.
Do these calendars represent your plans for each day, or do they document, in other words, prospectively, or do they document what actually occurred more like a diary?
They're both forward-looking and backward-looking, as you can tell by looking at them, because I cross out certain doctor's appointments that didn't happen, or one night where I was supposed to lift weights, I crossed that out because I obviously didn't make it that night. So you can see things that I didn't do crossed out in retrospect. And also when I list the specific people who I was with, that is likely backward-looking.
You explained that you kept these calendars because your father started keeping them in 1978, I believe you said. Mm-hmm. That's why you kept them. In other words, you wrote on them, but why did you keep them up until this time?
Well, he's kept them too since 1978, so he's a good role model.
Ms. Mitchell, you'll have to stop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Judge Kavanaugh has asked for a break, so we'll take a 15-minute break.
All right. So that's, of course, Kavanaugh answering questions. That was, again, that was Rachel Mitchell asking the questions. She was the sex crimes prosecutor for Maricopa County, Arizona. So they had brought her in to do this. You know, and you know, we talked about it the other day on the show, of course. The Republicans in kind of an awkward spot. All the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee are male. And you know, the specter of the Anita Hill hearings in, that would have been 91. I'm terrible with time. I really am. You know, where you've got all these male senators asking these questions of her and you know, in some instances not treating her terribly respectfully. Not a great moment for some of those guys. Not a good look. Joe Biden, I saw Joe Biden was on The View not that long ago. A Democrat saying that, you know, he owes Anita Hill an apology, of course, an apology that has never been delivered. It's always interesting to me when people do that. Oh, I owe this person an apology. I owe that person an apology. And then, it never ends up happening. Fred Bonig from thedailyripple.org says, during the week, we would ensure we were home early, usually by 5 or 6 p.m., referring to something Kavanaugh was saying. And there was a little bit of that. Some of that I missed as I was kind of doing my thing, getting us on the air. But if you're just joining us, of course, this is Matt Connarton, Unleashed in the Afternoon. We are live. But the hearing, like I said, Kavanaugh gave his statement. We're now in the question and answer portion, and they just took a 15-minute recess. So we may or may not go back when they resume live with that. But I wanted to, like I said, there's a lot that I want to get to on the show today. Mike Doyle sent me an email regarding actually a couple of different things that I want to share with everybody. And I want to kind of just briefly to address what happened on the show yesterday, just kind of because the show really ended with a bang. And if you missed yesterday's show, it is up, of course, at WMNHradio.org. I would say it was the most volatile edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed in the Afternoon ever, and very exciting, very compelling radio. But sometimes when things are spinning out of control, I kind of, sometimes you got to let it happen because it is compelling radio. But I do want to kind of just say for the audience, just to clarify where I am on everything that was being discussed. Sometimes that gets lost in the fray when certain personalities in the studio are really kind of, well, exploding. I feel like I have to address it later and say, by the way, here's what I think. Because we kind of ran out of show. And then I didn't get to really address what was happening and the discussion that was going on here in the studio. So I do want to take a moment to do that later. And I want to discuss, of course, the testimony of Christine Blasey Ford. The phone line is open, 603-250-6007, 603-250-6007. But before we get in any deeper, any further with this, I want to give you just a quick my political analysis of where we are here. And this is not, I want to take everything else out of it, which is difficult to do because this is obviously, like I said, especially if you heard yesterday's show, you know this. This is obviously when you're talking about anything involving sexual assault and all this kind of stuff, it's a delicate issue. Emotions run high and whatnot, as one would expect, as they should, right? But I just kind of want to just briefly take all the emotion out of it, take ideology out of it, take everything out of it, and just try to give you what is my political analysis of this moment. Regardless of who I believe and who I don't believe, and we'll get to that. This is not an objective show where we do objective journalism. It's an opinion show. So I'm going to give you my opinion. My opinions, plural, thus far in a moment. But this is as objective as I can be, and I think I'm pretty objective, this is my political analysis of this at this moment. I believe the Republicans are going to have to withdraw him. The White House is going to have to withdraw Kavanaugh. And here's why. They're in a terrible position. The Republicans are in a no-win situation at this moment. Because, first of all, well, actually, I don't want to go there. Let me say this. Okay, first of all, I'll tell you later what I think in terms of Christine Blasey Ford's testimony. But let me say this. People in the media, even some of the personalities on Fox News today, are saying that they find her to be credible and very damaging to Kavanaugh. They believe her, some of them. If the Republicans, if they get past this and they go ahead and they hurry up and confirm him, because they've been trying to, that's why they don't want to slow down. People keep saying, well, let's slow down. What's the problem with slowing down? Let's hear from Ford. Let's hear from anyone else who wants to testify. There's no rush here, right? You keep hearing that. There's no rush here. There's even, to his credit, there's a Republican senator or a congressman from North Carolina today who even said that, let's wait. Maybe we should maybe we should have the FBI investigate this. Let's wait. What's the hurry? Well, the hurry is, and this is why the Republicans are in such a terrible spot. This is why I think they're going to have to withdraw him and nominate somebody else. If the Republicans, they get past this and they say, okay, that's it, we're voting, and they get him through. If they manage to do that before the midterms, great, that's a victory for them, right? Okay, they got this done before the midterms, because the risk for them is if they get to the midterms and they lose control in the midterm elections, they're going to have a harder time after the midterms getting any of Trump's nominees through, right? But here's the problem for them. This is the terrible box that they're in now. If they do that, if they say, okay, let's do it, we're going to vote, let's get him through, and they do that, and they confirm him before the midterms, it's not such a great victory because they're going to harm themselves tremendously going into the midterms. There's going to be so much splashback on the Republicans because it's going to look like, regardless, again, I'm trying to give you a political analysis. I'm trying to keep personal feelings out of it, okay? But it's going to look like, I believe it's going to look like, okay, they didn't care about the allegations ultimately. They went through the motions, but they just want to get him through anyway and get this done and get him safely confirmed before the midterms. So it's going to harm them. See, this is the terrible, they're in a catch-22. They really are. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Their best shot of getting him confirmed is to get it done before the midterms, but if they do that and get him confirmed before the midterms, it's going to hurt them in the midterms. They might end up losing control. I mean, they're most likely going to lose control of the House anyway, right? But they might lose control of Congress because of that very reason. That might be the unintended consequence of getting him through before the midterms. It's going to harm them in the midterms. So it's a catch-22. They are in a no-win situation. They're going to have to withdraw Kavanaugh. That's my prediction. And I think the smartest thing politically to do at this point, and it would surprise a lot of people, but for Trump to make a statement saying, he doesn't have to say he believes her. He doesn't have to say he doesn't believe him. But if Trump were to make a statement saying, I watched her testimony, I wanted to hear her out, and at this point, I am no longer comfortable with this nominee. And we're going to put up a new nominee, and it's going to have to be after the midterms at this point, obviously, because we're out of time. But so after the election, after the midterms, we'll put up another nominee. I mean, again, it just, no matter what side you're on, no matter how you feel about it, this is my political analysis. This is the Republicans' only real option at this point. Are they back?
Say that.
No, they're not back yet. Okay. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the live feed here of the hearings. Now, my personal feelings. I watched her testimony. Look, we have no proof, and I'm a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. So, but this is just 100% my own feeling watching her. Personally, I believe her. Every instinct I have believes her. It's just how I feel. It's not a partisan thing. I'm an independent, One of the nice things about being an independent is there's no pressure to believe or disbelieve, right? Because obviously, if you're a partisan, if you're an ideologue, if you're a Republican, you believe him. If you're a Democrat, you believe her. Well, I'm neither. And I don't trust any of these people. Politicians in general, I don't trust, right? Regardless of whether they have a D or their R after their name. So I'm just telling you, personally, watching her testimony, I believe her. And I don't believe him. He's an odd guy, though. Some will say I'm making too much of this, but I started to look at Kavanaugh as a little bit of an odd duck. When, if you've seen the video of one of the Parkland, one of the fathers of one of the victims in the Parkland shooting, approaching Kavanaugh, trying to shake his hand. It's such a strange moment. Introduces himself and goes to extend his hand, and Kavanaugh just stops and stares at the guy for a few minutes. Not for a few minutes, a few seconds, rather. A few minutes would be even stranger. But Kavanaugh just stops and stares at the guy for a few seconds with this odd expression on his face, and then just turns and walks away. Really, really bizarre. And I don't know what was going on there. I don't know if somebody told Kavanaugh, hey, maybe somebody recognized the guy and told Kavanaugh, hey, one of the fathers of one of the victims in the Parkland shooting is here. He's probably, got this anti-gun agenda, just try to avoid him or whatever. I don't know. But it was so strange. Why, regardless of where you are on the issue, I mean, just think about for yourself, right? Put yourself in that position, and you could be the most, hey, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm someone who tends to be very skeptical of gun control, okay? But just think about wherever you are on the issue. Just imagine you're in some situation where someone introduces himself to you as the parent, as the father of someone, a child who died in the Parkland shooting, and they extend their hand. And you just kind of just look at them for a few seconds quizzically and then just turn and walk away? Who does that? It's strange. And I just remember seeing that. And you know, I mean, and again, maybe he was coached to do that. Maybe somebody said, hey, this guy's here, you know. But to not even shake the man's hand, you know, and then, you know, if he doesn't want to get into a protracted discussion on the Second Amendment at that very instant, hey, that would be perfectly understandable, right? Because, you know, that he's going through this confirmation hearing, they're taking a break, he's got to go confer with whomever, maybe get some water, whatever. You know, this isn't the time to stand here and have that conversation. That would make perfect sense, and he could politely, you know, shake his hand and then politely excuse himself and leave. That would be fine. People do that all the time with people they either don't have time to talk to or maybe don't want to talk to. Maybe he just didn't want to talk to the guy. But there's a mechanism for doing that. You politely excuse yourself and you leave. But to just kind of stare at the guy and then turn and leave. I just remember watching that and thinking, what a weird guy. That's kind of creepy. You know? You can't even shake his hand and maybe just say something, whether you actually mean it or not. Some platitude like, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, and look him in the face, man to man, and say that. And then say, excuse me, and then turn and walk away. You can't even do that? This is bizarre to me. Like, ever since I saw that, I thought, this guy's a little strange. Now, that doesn't mean he's ever sexually assaulted anyone or tried to. I'm just telling you, personally, I think he's an odd guy. And maybe, hello to Matt DaCosta, who joins us in the Facebook live chat. And maybe it's seeing that particular video and gaining that particular impression of him. Maybe that is, I will acknowledge that might be coloring, that might be influencing in some way my perception going forward of Kavanaugh. But it's just so weird. So it looks like Kavanaugh is returning. I'm going to pull the volume back up on this. He's sitting down, opening, looks like they're resuming the hearing.
You are either Brett Kavanaugh or Dr. Ford. From a realistic perspective.
That's CBS News commentator. We'll get to, let's hear, I want to hear at least a little bit more of this. But if anyone wants to interject, I will take your call, certainly. 603-250-6007 is the number. 603-250-6007. But I'll tell you, I did mention Fox News. I mean, earlier, Chris Wallace, Judge Napolitano, even Brett Baer, you know, after Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, you know, they were saying, you know, she seems credible, and this was incredibly damaging. But we'll see where we are after Kavanaugh's testimony. I think they're, all right, they're resuming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, you said before, and again today, that Mark Judge was a close friend of yours in high school. Now, Dr. Ford, as you know, has said that he was in the room when she was attacked. She also says you were, too. Unfortunately, the FBI has never interviewed him. We've not been able to have his attendance here. The chairman refuses to call him. If she's saying Mark Judge was in the room then he should be in the room here today. Would you want him called as a witness?
Senator, This allegation came into the committee.
Oh, no, but I'm just asking the question. Would you want him to be here as a witness?
He's already provided sworn testimony to the committee. This allegation's been hidden by the committee, by members of the committee.
It has not been investigated by the FBI. The committee has refused to allow it to be.
It was dropped on me. It was sprung.
It was not investigated by the FBI, and he has not been called where he might be under
Should have
oath.
been handled in the due course, Senator, when it came in.
I would disagree with that. I've been on this committee 44 years, both Republicans and Democrats. I've never seen somebody that critical and not allowed to be here to called to be testified or an FBI background. But
He's provided sworn testimony, and Senator, let me finish. The allegation came in weeks ago, and nothing was done with it by the ranking member, and then it sprung on me.
Judge Kavanaugh, I've heard your line, and you stated it over and over again, and I have that well in mind. But let me ask you this. He authored a book titled Wasted, Tales of a Gen X Drunk. He references a Bart O'Kavanaugh vomiting in someone's car during beach week and then passing out. Is that you that he's talking about?
Senator, Mark Judge was...
To your knowledge, is that you that he's talking about?
I'll explain if you let me.
Proceed, please.
Mark Judge was a friend of ours in high school who developed a very serious drinking problem, an addiction problem, that lasted decades and was very difficult for him to escape from. And he nearly died. And then he had leukemia as well on top of it. Now, as part of his therapy, or part of his coming to grips with sobriety, he wrote a book that is a fictionalized book and an account. I think he picked out names of friends of ours to throw them in as kind of close to what for characters in the book. So you know, we can sit here.
We don't know whether that's you or not.
We can sit here and like make fun of some guy who has an addiction.
I'm not making
I don't think
fun
that
of
really
anybody,
is
Judge
really
Kavanaugh,
good.
I'm trying to get a straight answer from you under oath. Are you Bart Kavanaugh that he's referring to? Yes or no?
You'd have to ask him.
Well, I agree with you there, and that's why I wish that the chairman had him here under oath. Now, you talked about your yearbook. In your yearbook, you talked about drinking and sexual exploits, did you not?
Senator, let me take a step back and explain high school. I was number one in the class. Freshman.
And I thought only
no.
I thought only the Senate.
You got this up. I'm gonna talk about my high school. No. I'm gonna
Let him answer.
I'm gonna talk about my high school record. If you're gonna sit here and mock me,
We were. I think we were all very fair to Dr. Ford.
Who's mocking
Be just as fair to Judge Kavanaugh.
I busted my butt in academics. I always tried to do the best I could. So I recall I finished one in the class, first and freshman and junior year, right up at the top with Steve Clark and Eddie Ayala. We were always kind of in the mix. I played sports. I was captain of the varsity basketball team. I was wide receiver and defensive back on the football team. I ran track in the spring of '82 to try to get faster. I did my service projects at the school, which involved going to the soup kitchen downtown. Let me finish. And going to tutor intellectually disabled kids at the Rockville Library. Went to church. And yes, we got together with our friends.
Does this reflect what you are? Does this yearbook reflect your focus on academics and your respect for women? That's easy, yes or no. You don't have to filibuster the answer. Does it reflect your focus on
I already
academics?
said the yearbook in my opening statement. The yearbook
Judge,
was obviously...
Just wait a minute. He's asked the question. I'll give you time to answer it.
The yearbook, as I said in my opening statement, was something where the students and editors made a decision to treat some of it as farce and some of it as exaggeration, some of it celebrating things that don't reflect the things that were really the central part of our school. Yes, we went to parties, though. Yes, of course, we went to parties, and the yearbook page describes that and kind of makes fun of it. And as a, if we want to sit here and talk about whether a Supreme Court nomination should be based on a high school yearbook page, I think that's taken us to a new level of absurdity.
So, Ms. Mitchell.
This is the
We got a
prosecutor.
filibuster, but not a single answer.
Ms. Mitchell.
Judge, do you still have your calendars there?
I do.
I would like you to look at the July 1st entry.
Now, this is Rachel Mitchell. Again, she's the Maricopa, Arizona prosecutor for sex crimes.
Tom, PJ, Bernie, and Squee?
Squee. That's a nickname.
Okay. To what does this refer and to whom?
So first says Tobin's House workout. So that's one of the football workouts that we would have that Dr. Finizio would run for guys on the football team during the summer. So we would be there. That's usually 6 to 8 or so, kind of till near dark. And then it looks like we went over to Timmy's. You want to know their last names too? I'm happy to do it.
If you could just identify, is Judge Mark Judge?
It is.
And is PJ Smith?
It is. So it's Tim Gaudette, Mark Judge, Tom Kane, PJ Smith, Bernie McCarthy, Chris Garrett.
Chris Garrett is Squee.
He is.
Did you, in your calendar, routinely document social gatherings like house parties or gatherings of friends in your calendar?
Yes, it certainly appears that way. That's what I was doing in the summer of 1982, and you can see that reflected on several of the entries.
If a gathering like Dr. Ford has described had occurred, would you have documented that?
Yes, because I documented everything, those kinds of events, even small get-togethers. August 7th is another good example where I documented a small get-together that summer. So, yes.
August 7th. Could you read that?
I think that's go to Becky's, Matt, Denise, Lori, Jenny.
Have you reviewed every entry that is in these calendars of May, June, July, and August of 1982?
I have.
Is there anything that could even remotely fit what we're talking about in terms of Dr. Ford's allegations?
No.
As a lawyer and a judge, we've talked about the FBI, are you aware that this type of offense would actually be investigated by local police?
Yes, I mentioned Montgomery County Police earlier, yes.
Okay. Are you aware that in Maryland there is no statute of limitations that would prohibit you being charged even if this happened in 1982?
That's my understanding.
Have you at any time been contacted by any members of local police agencies regarding this matter?
No, ma'am.
Prior to your nomination for Supreme Court, you've talked about all of the female clerks you've had and the women that you've worked with. I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about globally. Have you ever been accused, either formally or informally, of unwanted sexual behavior?
No.
And when I say informally, I mean just a female complains. It doesn't have to be to anybody else but you.
No.
Since Dr. Ford's allegation was made public, how many times have you been interviewed by the committee?
It's been a 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember now. It's been several times. Each of these new things, absurd as they are, we get on the phone and kind of go through them.
So have you submitted 2 interviews specifically about Dr. Ford's allegation?
Yes.
And what about Deborah Ramirez's allegation that
Yes.
you waved your penis in front of her?
Yes.
What about Julie Swetnick's allegation that you repeatedly engaged in drugging and gang raping or allowing women to be gang raped?
Yes. Yes, I've been interviewed about it.
Were your answers to my questions today consistent with the answers that you gave to the committee in these various interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I see I'm out of time.
Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Kavanaugh, earlier today, Dr. Christine Ford sat in that same chair, and under oath, she said clearly and unequivocally that she was the victim of sexual assault at your hands. She answered our questions directly, and she didn't flinch at the prospect of submitting herself to an FBI investigation of these charges. We know, and I'm sure she's been advised by her attorneys, that a person lying to the FBI can face criminal prosecution. You have clearly and unequivocally denied that you assaulted Dr. Ford. With that statement, you must believe that there is no credible evidence or any credible witness that could prove otherwise. You started off with an impassioned statement at the beginning, and I can imagine, try to imagine what you have been through or your family's been through, and I'm sure I wouldn't get close to it. But it was an impassioned...
No, you wouldn't.
I'm sure I wouldn't. It's an impassioned statement. And in the course of it, you said, I welcome any kind of investigation. I quote you. I welcome any kind of investigation. I've got a suggestion for you. Right now, turn to your left in the front row, to Don McGahn, counsel to President Donald Trump. Ask him to suspend this hearing and nomination process until the FBI completes its investigation of the charges made by Dr. Ford and others, and goes to bring the witnesses forward and provides that information to this hearing. I'm sure that the chairman at that point will understand that that is a reasonable request to finally put to rest these charges if they are false, or to prove them if they are not. You spent 2 years in the White House office that approved judicial nominees. You turned to the FBI over and over and over again for their work. Let's bring them in here and now. Turn to Don McGahn and tell him it's time to get this done. An FBI investigation is the only way to answer some of these questions.
Stop the clock. This committee
This is Grassley.
is running this hearing. Not the White House, not Don McGahn, not even you as a nominee. We are here today because Dr. Ford asked for an opportunity here. I know you did too as well. In fact, maybe even before she did. We're here because people wanted to be heard from charges that they all thought were unfair, or activities like sexual assault was unfair. So I want to assure Senator Durbin, regardless of what you say to Senator Don McGahn, we're not suspending this hearing. Proceed to answer the question, or whatever, or if the gentleman...
I'll just say this. If you, Judge Kavanaugh, turn to Don McGahn and to this committee and say, for the sake of my reputation, my family name, and to get to the bottom of the truth of this, I am not going to be an obstacle to an FBI investigation, I would hope that all the members of the committee would join me in saying we're going to abide by your wishes and we will have that investigation.
I welcome whatever the committee wants to do, because I'm telling the truth.
I want to know what you want to do.
I'm telling the truth.
I want to know what you want to do, Judge.
I'm innocent. I'm innocent of this charge.
Then you're prepared for an FBI investigation?
They don't reach conclusions. You reach the conclusions,
No,
Senator.
but they do investigate questions.
I'm
And
innocent.
you can't have it both ways, Judge. You can't say here at the beginning,
I wanted a
passion
hearing.
moment,
Look,
I
this
welcome
thing-
any kind of investigation.
This thing was
and then
sprung
walk
on
away
me.
from this.
This thing was sprung at the last minute after being held by staff. You know.
Judge,
And I
if
called
there is
for
no
I called
truth
for a
to-
hearing immediately.
If there is no truth to her charges, the FBI investigation will show that.
Right.
Are you afraid that they might not?
He's got him in a box.
The FBI does not reach. That's a phony
Well,
question, because the FBI doesn't reach conclusions.
So
they
let's
just provide the 302s. With 302s, so I can explain to people who don't know what that is. They just go and do what you're doing: ask questions and then type up a report. They don't reach the bottom line conclusion.
This morning I asked Dr. Ford. I asked her about this incident where she ran into Mark Judge at a Safeway. And she said, sure, I remember, 6 or 8 weeks after this occurrence. Well, someone at the Washington Post went in and took a look at Mr. Judge's book and has been able to, the run that he wrote about his addiction and his alcoholism. And they have narrowed it down what they think was a period of time, 6 or 8 weeks after the event. And he would have been working at the Safeway at that point. So the point I'm getting to is we at least can connect some dots here and get some information. Why would you resist that kind of investigation? Why would you resist that kind of investigation?
Senator, I wanted the hearing last week.
I'm asking about the FBI investigation.
The committee figures out how to ask the questions. I'll do whatever. I've been on the phone multiple times with committee counsel. I'll talk to...
Judge Kavanaugh, will you support an FBI investigation right now?
I will do whatever the committee wants to...
Personally, do you think that's the best thing for us to do?
Just kind of rolling his eyes.
You want to answer?
Look, Senator, I've said I wanted a hearing, and I'd said I was welcome anything. I'm innocent. This thing was held when it could have been presented in the ordinary way. It could have been held and handled confidentially at first, which was what Dr. Ford's wishes were, as I understand it, and wouldn't have caused this, like, destroyed my family like this effort has.
I think an FBI investigation will help all of us on both sides of the issue.
Senator Graham asked for the floor, but before he does, it seems to me that if you want to know something, you got the witness right here to ask him. And secondly, if you want an FBI report, you can ask for it yourself. I've asked for FBI reports in the past, in the 38 years I've been in the Senate. Senator Graham.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less. Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsay said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it, because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process, you came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job interview.
You consider that you've been through a job interview?
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution. Which
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through hell and then some.
This is not a job interview.
Yeah.
This is hell.
This
is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. Your high school yearbook. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. You're supposed to be Bill Cosby when you're a junior and senior in high school. and all of a sudden you got over it. It's been my understanding that if you drug women and rape them for 2 years in high school, you probably don't stop. Here's my understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it, like the American Bar Association has the gold standard. His integrity is absolutely unquestioned. He is the very circumspect in his personal conduct, harbors no biases or prejudices. He's entirely ethical, is a really decent person. He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person. The ABA. The one thing I can tell you, you should be proud of. Ashley, you should be proud of this, that you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
Senator Whitehouse.
Wow. That was the most impassioned I've ever seen Lindsey Graham ever.
Should we let things settle a little bit after that?
If you want to, we'll take a 60-second break.
No, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm good. One of the reasons, Mr. Kavanaugh, that we are looking at the yearbook is that it is relatively consistent in time with the events at issue here. And because it appears to be your words, is it in fact your words on your yearbook page?
We submitted things to the editors, and I believe they took them. I don't know if they changed things or not, but
you're not aware of any changes, as far as you know.
I'm not aware one way or the other, but I'm not going to sit here and contest that. Have at it if you want to go through my yearbook.
Yeah, I'm actually interested. You know, lawyers should be working off of common terms and understand the words that we're using. I think that's a pretty basic principle among lawyers. Wouldn't you agree?
It is. If you're worried about my yearbook, have at it, Senator.
Let's look at Beach Week Ralph Club biggest contributor. What does the word Ralph mean in that?
That probably refers to throwing up. I'm known to have a weak stomach, and I always have. In fact, the last time I was here, you asked me about having ketchup on spaghetti. I always have had a weak stomach.
I don't know that I asked about ketchup on spaghetti, but
you didn't. Someone did.
Okay.
And this is well known. Anyone who's known me, like a lot of these people behind me, have known me my whole life, know, you know, I got a weak stomach, whether it's with beer or with spicy food or anything.
So the vomiting that you reference in the Ralph Club reference related to the consumption of alcohol?
Senator, I was the top of my class academically, busted my butt in school, captain of the varsity basketball team, got into Yale College. When I got into Yale College, got into Yale Law School, worked my tail off.
And did the word, Ralph, you used in your yearbook
I already answered the question. If you're,
did it relate to alcohol?
I like
You
beer.
haven't answered that.
I like beer. I don't know if you do.
Okay.
Do you like beer, Senator, or not? What do you like to drink?
Next one is,
Senator, what do you like to drink?
Judge, have you, I don't know if it's buffed or boofed. How do you pronounce that? Judge?
That refers to flatulence. We were 16.
Okay. And so when your friend Mark Judge said put the same thing in his yearbook page back to you, he had the same meaning. It was flatulence.
I don't know what he did, but that's my recollection. We want to talk about flatulence at age 16 on a yearbook page. I'm game.
You mentioned, I think, the Renata, I don't know how you pronounce that. That's a proper name of an individual you know?
Renata.
Renata? It's spelled with an E at the end, R-E-N-A-T-E. Is that
correct?
Okay. And then after that is the word alumnius. What does the word alumnius mean in that context?
I explained that in my opening statement. We She was a great friend of ours. A bunch of us went to dances with her. She hung out with us as a group.
So I just want to interject something here, and you know, this is important, so we'll stick with it. But I'm not sure. I mean, first of all, Lindsey Graham, you know, did. I mean, again, I gave you my personal feelings earlier. However, I think for his cause, I mean, Lindsey Graham, that was quite the statement earlier, and it was the most impassioned I'd ever seen him. You know, and he made reference to the yearbook. The questions about the yearbook, I don't know if this is a great strategy for the Democrats, because what Kavanaugh clearly is trying to do, and what Lindsey Graham was trying to do, and others will try to do, is say, you know, the Democrats are so desperate. And again, I'm just giving you a political analysis, regardless of any personal feelings. The Democrats are so desperate to try to nail him that, you know, they keep going back to his yearbook, talking about his yearbook and you know, what happened in high school and whatnot, and behaviors in high school as relates to trying to use the yearbook for evidence. And I think for their cause, they may be doing themselves more harm than good with that. Because I think that they might be, I mean, look, you know, when we're talking about, you know, the Ralph Club and, you know, what did this mean? What does that mean? And Kavanaugh can say, well, that refers to flatulence. We were 16. I think they might be making it a little bit too easier for the Republicans to say, look at how absurd this is. Look at how absurd it got today. I actually think the better strategy might have been, you know, to be honest with you, allow Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, which, again, I watched earlier, and I mean, even on Fox News, some of them were saying, you know, she seems credible, she seems compelling. I think it might have been smarter to let that kind of stand on its own and not go down this road of, with the yearbook, trying to catch him on this, trying to catch him on that. Okay, well, you were part of the Ralph Club, so were you a big drinker? I think it's a bad strategy on the part of the Democrats. I think it is getting a little absurd. And again, to maybe not give so much of an objective analysis, but to kind of re-inject some of my personal feelings about it, I watched her testimony, and I do believe her. I mean, that's a gut reaction that I have. My instincts tell me she's telling the truth. But to get in all this yearbook stuff and trying to sort of trap him and paint this picture of him in terms of how he was in high school, I think it's a very faulty strategy. I really do, and I think they've gone a little bit off the rails here. Okay, John Cornyn from Texas is questioning him now.
This and breathless reporting.
Of course, the sexual assault that Dr. Ford claims that you denied, then the claims of Ms. Ramirez that not even the New York Times would report because they couldn't corroborate it. And then Stormy Daniels' lawyer released a bombshell accusing you of gang rape. All of those are crimes, are they not?
They are, and I'm never going to get my reputation back. My life is totally and permanently altered.
Well, Judge, don't give up.
I'm not giving up.
The American people are listening to this, and they will make their decision, and I think you'll come out on the right side of that decision.
Well, I will always be a good person and try to be a good judge, whatever happens. But
so this is not a job interview. You've been accused of a crime. If you have lied to the committee and the investigators, that is a crime in and of itself, correct?
That is correct.
So in order to vote against your nomination, we would have to conclude that you are a serial liar. Yeah. And you have exposed yourself to legal jeopardy in your interaction with this committee and the investigators. Isn't that correct?
That's my understanding.
You talked in your interview with Martha McCollum the other night about a fair process. Some of my colleagues across the aisle say, well, the burden is not on the accuser because this is a job interview. The burden is on you, but you said you weren't there and it didn't happen. It's impossible for you to prove a negative. So I would just suggest that you have been accused of a crime and that a fair process under the United States Constitution and our notion of fair play means that the people who make an accusation against you have to come forward with some evidence. Isn't that part of a fair process?
Yes, sir, Senator.
And part of that means that if you're going to make an allegation, there needs to be corroboration. In other words, you're not guilty because somebody makes an accusation against you in this country. We're not a police state. We don't give the government that kind of power. We insist that those charges be proven by competent evidence. And I know we're not in a court. I've told my colleagues if we were in court, half of them would be in contempt of court. But you have been accused of a crime, and I believe fundamental notions of fair play and justice in our constitutional system require that if somebody's going to make that accusation against you, then they need to come forward with some corroboration, not just allegations. And you're right to be angry about the delays in your ability to come here and protect your good name, because in the interim, it just keeps getting worse. It's not Dr. Ford. It's this story that not even the New York Times would report, the allegation of Ms. Ramirez. And then Stormy Daniels' lawyer comes up with this incredible story accusing you of the most sordid and salacious conduct. It's outrageous, and you're right to be angry. But this is your chance to tell your story, and I hope you have a chance to tell us everything you want to tell us. But the burden is not on you to disprove the allegations made. The burden under our system, when you accuse somebody of criminal conduct, is on the person making the accusation.
Technically, he's right.
Now, I understand this isn't a trial, like I said, but I just wanted to make sure that we understood. It's hard to reconstruct what happened 36 years ago, and I appreciate what you said about Dr. Ford, that perhaps she has had an incident at some point in her life, and you are sympathetic to that. But your reputation is on the line, and I hope people understand the gravity of the charges made against you and what a fair process looks like.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, we're talking here about decency, and you understand we have this constitutional duty to advise and consent. And for me, when this evidence came forward, I decided that I needed to look at this, and I needed to find out about it, and I needed to ask you questions about it, as well as others that were involved. So again, I'm not going to take quite the same approach as my colleagues here and talk about Don McGahn or any of this. Why don't you just ask the president? Dr. Ford can't do this. We clearly haven't been able to do this. But just ask the president to reopen the FBI investigation.
I think the committee is you're doing the investigation. I'm here to answer your questions.
No.
And I should say one thing, Senator Klobuchar, which is I appreciate our meeting together, and I appreciate how you handled the prior hearing, and I have a lot of respect for you.
Well, thank you. All of that aside, here's the thing. You could actually just get this open so that we can talk to these witnesses, and the FBI can do it instead of us. And you've come before us, but we have people like Mark Judge, who Dr. Ford says was a witness to this. We have this polygraph.
This is a much, much smarter strategy. This is what the Democrats should stick with, that this is much smarter than the yearbook stuff. They should keep hammering him. Why don't you want an FBI investigation? And that'll get this all behind all of us, right? I mean, that's the strategy that I would use, and I think Klobuchar is being smart to go that way. That's Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota.
Him questions. We talked about past nomination processes, and you talked about those, and I note that President George Bush, in the Anita Hill Justice Thomas case, he opened up the FBI investigation and let questions being asked, and I think it was helpful for people. So was his decision reasonable?
I don't know the circumstances of that. What I know, Senators,
The circumstances are that he opened up the investigation so the FBI could ask some questions. That's what he opened up the background check.
I'm here to answer questions about my yearbook or about, what I...
Okay.
My sports or, summer league basketball.
I'm not going to ask about the yearbook. So most people have done some drinking in high school and college. And many people even struggle with alcoholism and binge drinking. My own dad struggled with alcoholism most of his life, and he got in trouble for it, and there were consequences. He is still in AA at age 90, and he's sober. And in his words, he was pursued by grace, and that's how he got through this. So in your case, you have said here and other places that you never drank so much that you didn't remember what happened. But yet, we have heard, not under oath, but we have heard your college roommate say that you did drink frequently. These are in news reports, that you would sometimes be belligerent. Another classmate said it's not credible for you to say you didn't have memory lapses. So drinking is one thing.
I actually don't think that's the second quote's correct. On the first quote, if you wanted, I provided some material that's still redacted about the situation with the freshman year roommate, and I don't really want to repeat that in a public hearing, but just so you know, there were 3 people in a room, Dave White, Jamie Roach, and me, and it was a contentious situation where Jamie did not like Dave White. At all, and I mean this.
Okay.
So Dave White came back from home one weekend, and Jamie Roach had moved all his furniture out into the courtyard.
Okay.
And so he walks in, and so that's your source on that. Okay. So there's some old.
Drinking is one thing.
And there's much more. Okay. Look at the redacted portion of what I said. I don't want to repeat that in a public hearing.
I will. Could I just ask one more question?
Redacted information about that.
Okay. Drinking is one thing. But the concern is about truthfulness. And in your written testimony, you said sometimes you had too many drinks. Was there ever a time when you drank so much that you couldn't remember what happened or part of what happened the night before?
No, I remember what happened, and I think you've probably had beers, Senator, and so
you're saying there's never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before or part of what happened?
You're asking about, blackout. I don't know. Have you?
Could you answer the question, Judge? That's not happened. Is that your answer?
Yeah, and I'm curious if you have.
I have no drinking problem, Judge.
Yeah, nor do I.
Okay, thank you.
That, I think, is a bad strategy on his part, the way he tries to deflect by because it comes off as super defensive, and when people come off as defensive, they come off as guilty. I'm not saying that it means anything, doesn't mean he is guilty, but he keeps doing that, especially when the subject of drinking comes up. It is interesting, and I think it's a bad strategy on his part.
Sent to the committee for us to make our own evaluations. We're capable of making our own determination about the accuracy of any of those allegations. The FBI has put out a statement over, now I suppose it's a month ago, clearly stating this matter is closed as far as the letter being sent to them. And there is no federal crime to investigate. If Senate Democrats hope for the FBI to draw any conclusions on this matter, I'm going to remind you what Joe Biden said. Now, I said this in my statement, but maybe people aren't listening when I say, and maybe they won't even hear this. Joe Biden, quote, "The next person who refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything. The FBI explicitly does not in this or any other case reach a conclusion, period. They say, he said, she said, they said, period." So when people wave an FBI report before you or even bring it up now as something prospectively, that wasn't in his quote. Understand they do not reach conclusions. They do not make recommendations. Senator Hatch.
Mr. Chairman.
No, don't take a break.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me do this.
May I say for the record that actually we have asked, you said that nobody's asked the FBI or we could ask the FBI. I actually have, I think others have, and I think that the issue is that part of what an FBI report does is to investigate and seek either corroborating or exculpatory evidence. It's not so much the conclusion that it draws as the breadth of the evidence that is sought out through the investigation and the difference between what somebody might say to an FBI agent when they're being examined and, for instance, Mr. Judge's letter signed by his lawyer sent in. It's just a different thing. And I believe still that this is the first background investigation in the history of background investigations that hasn't been reopened when new credible derogatory information was raised about the subject, about the nominee. So I just didn't want to let the point you made stand without referencing what we had tried to do.
Pardon me, but I'll just add to the point you made. The letter was sent to the FBI. The FBI sent it to the White House with a letter saying the case is closed. We're taking a break now. For Senator, we're taking a break now.
All right.
15-minute break.
All right, they're taking a 15-minute break. If you're just joining us, of course, this is Matt Connarton, Unleashed in the Afternoon. We are live on WMNH 95.3 FM and streaming at WMNHradio.org and, of course, on via Facebook on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. I see Ben Dion has joined us, of course. Ben Dion of the Weekly Dion, which you can hear every Thursday immediately following this show live at 6 p.m. here at WMNH 95.3. And so we've been listening to the testimony, of course, ongoing. We're in the question and answer period, obviously, of Judge Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh is answering questions from both the Democrats and the Republicans, and some, of course, from Rachel Mitchell, who is the sex crimes prosecutor from Maricopa County, Arizona. She's also been asking some questions, and she's the woman that the Republicans brought in because everybody on the Republican side of the Judiciary Committee is male. So, they didn't. I mean, they there's been some mixed reactions to that, but I think it was probably the smart thing to do. I'm watching the live feed from CBS News, and they're replaying the Lindsey Graham got very, very impassioned. The most impassioned that I've ever seen him. John Cornyn, speaking for the Republicans, made the point that, look, there is, innocent until proven guilty. That's a real thing. And none of the people who've made these accusations, like Christine Blasey Ford, testified earlier. They haven't brought forth any evidence, no corroborating stories, nothing. Now, I did say earlier, and I stick by this, I watched her testimony, and I found her to be believable and credible. Having said that, of course, on the other hand, there is no proof thus far. There is no hard evidence that Kavanaugh has done what he's accused of. So we do need to keep that in mind as well, in fairness. But I think that, and I was critical earlier, I'll say it again for those just joining us, I think the Democrats make a mistake when they get bogged. Here's what I think the Democrats have done right and what I think they've done wrong so far today, just in what I've watched. I think what they've done wrong is, again, they get bogged down in this stuff about the yearbook and trying to pin him down on this thing. Okay, well, looks like this would seem to indicate you were a heavy drinker, etc. I think it gets a little weird when they go down that road. But the smart thing they've done is when they try to nail him on this, why don't you want an FBI investigation? And they keep hammering on that, and I think that's smart. We have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed in the Afternoon. Who's this? Oh, hang on. I screwed that up. I apologize. Are you still there, caller?
Yes, it's your old pal Fred, and we're both watching the same TV show.
Yes. Hey, Fred. Sorry, I hit the wrong button at first when you called, so I'm sorry for the delay there. But Fred Boenig from the dailyripple.org, yes. So what do you think, Fred?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about this? We all have to remember this is a job interview, right?
Oh, I keep hearing...
it's not a trial, it's a job interview.
I keep hearing that brought up, yes.
Right? When was the last time you gave your prospective employer that much crap.
Oh. You mean in terms of him
fighting back with him? Hey, how do you drink, boss? Do you drink anything, boss?
Yeah, well,
You do that, right?
I do think that he harms himself when he does that, because he comes off as very defensive and defensive,
and angry.
Yeah. Now let me say this though. Now let's suppose for a moment, and by the way, I watched her testimony and I do believe her, Christine Blasey Ford. That's my gut reaction. But
yeah,
let me say this in fairness. Let's suppose that she is wrong, confused, or whatever. Let's suppose that everything that's being thrown at this guy is false. If that is the case, then he has a right to, I mean, anyone who's facing these kind of accusations, if they are in fact false, would be a little bit shaken up. So,
well, if anybody was this person, they would say, I want the FBI to interview every one of my friends about this. I want them to do every little scratch of detail. And this is just the Ford one. There's other allegations that have not been corroborated. And as we know, we're talking about the guy who graduated #1 in his class at George Washington University, Michael Avenatti. I don't think he'd put something out there that he didn't do his own due diligence on.
Yeah, so far everything Avenatti's brought forward has come to fruition, but yeah,
I'm just saying that. But what wouldn't? I mean, that alone deserves somebody to go look at.
Well, that's the.
I mean, the woman has a certain. We haven't heard that woman, but geez, the credibility of her credentials, her background checks. She's had as many background checks as this guy.
Right. You're talking about Julie. I keep getting her last name wrong. Is it
Segway or Stegway?
Spetnik or something? I don't know why. I have this weird.
Her.
I have a weird mental block when it comes to her last name. I have no problem remembering Julie, but.
But do you notice every time? I mean, all he has to say is, "Yeah, I'm all for getting an investigation," but he doesn't want Mark Judge to talk. Because you can write anything you want, and even but it's the cross-examination, as they say, when that big Crown Vic pulls into your driveway, and those two guys come out in the suits.
Yep.
Life changes,
Right. Well, yeah, that's the thing. He should want, and that's what I think is smart about what the Democrats, because I don't know if you heard what I was saying a minute ago, but I think there's something smart that they've been doing and something not so smart I think they've been doing in my estimation. But I think the smart thing they've been doing is to keep hammering on this. Why don't you want an FBI investigation? Because if I were him and I'm this squeaky clean choir boy, that he wants us to believe he went to church on Sunday and whatnot, I would, like you were just saying, I would welcome the investigation to clear my name, because he keeps talking about how his name and his reputation have been damaged forever, and that's true. But I would want to be exonerated. It's just like I say all the time about the Trump thing. Not to get off on a tangent, but it's relevant because it's an example of if you're so sure. Like he calls it a witch hunt, and all the Trump supporters say, yeah, of course it's a witch hunt, and there's nothing there. Well, if you're so sure, you should want the investigation to go forward, and so that he can be exonerated if he's so squeaky clean. So it's the same idea here. If I were him and I hadn't done anything, I would welcome that investigation. So I can say, see, the FBI didn't find anything. There's no evidence here that I did anything, because I didn't. I would want to clear my name. Without that, his name will be sullied forever.
Oh yeah, and after hearing, Dr. Ford and hearing about her two front doors, you get the feeling that this woman's serious about it. She really does come across, like you said, very credible. And this guy is just he's so defensive. So I mean, you just feel like, dude, maybe you should just say, you know what, I want the FBI to come and do this because you're looking really bad fighting with them. That's because they told him that Donald Trump, if he didn't fight, Donald Trump would probably, nixed his, said, this isn't.
Good point.
And that was, that's been reported out there much. So
that makes sense. Yeah. But I think,
if you don't fight, then, you don't do good TV. And
right.
Believe me, he's not coming across as good TV.
Maybe Kavanaugh needs a Twitter account so he can tweet about how all these, how this is a witch hunt. But I
notice he doesn't answer questions either. He doesn't answer questions, and he filibusters.
Right, he does, yes, which is smart. Run out the clock, But I think it makes him look. I think it makes him look defensive. And I don't know if you heard the top of the show, Fred, but I was saying just my political analysis. I think the Republicans are in a catch-22. I think they're going to have to withdraw his nomination, or ask him, or ask the White House to withdraw his nomination, no matter what, because on the one hand, if they get through this day and they go ahead and put it to a vote, they want to hurry up and get him in before the midterms. But I think doing that will actually harm them in the midterms because it's going to splash back on them so badly. So many people are going to be outraged. Look, in the face of all this, instead of waiting and hearing from more witnesses and whatnot, they tried to ram it through because they wanted to get it done before the midterms. Because of that, they're going to end up losing votes in the midterms. So I think they have no choice but to ask him to withdraw. What do you think?
Well, here's what I think. I think if Susan Collins or the woman from Alaska,
Lisa Murkowski,
vote for him, if they vote for him, that means they're calling that woman a liar, and she was anything but a liar.
Yeah.
I mean, if they say, look, I can't guess, but I'm not going to call this woman a liar, and there's a lot of other people out there we can put in here. I just can't vote for him with a clean conscience, whether he did it or not. I'm not saying he did it, but I'm not going to call that woman a liar because she was more than credible. And there's this too much haze, and it's a job interview. You don't have to be beyond reasonable doubt. You just have to have a doubt because you don't want to hire the guy. Because there's a question mark, and there's all this other stuff, and he's not done. The Democrats are going to pound him, every one of them, about why don't you ask for an FBI? That's coming, and they're gonna get him to go off.
Yeah,
you see, he's going to lose his cool because he's all worked up already. That's why they took a break. That's why they took this break,
right?
So they could all kind of go in the back room and say, all right, now calm down. And Lindsey Graham, I mean. Now, Lindsey Graham can't speak again. He has his 5 minutes. He's done.
Yeah.
So we still have women on this. Yet we still have Blumenthal and all these other people. So
that's true.
There's and you notice they're not using their doctor anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Because they saw her going after him. That's what they saw. They saw her going after him.
Right.
As a prosecutor.
Right.
Because she's used to prosecuting men.
That's true. that's a very good point. Yeah.
And you saw it. You saw the way she was setting him up. You were like, and that's why they jumped in, because you saw her going, okay, what about this? And what about that? And you could see, and he was getting real nervous. And, because they're going to ask him about Beach Week, which showed up in the other woman's stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No,
that's just my take on it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's there was something else I wanted to ask your opinion on, and it escapes me now. Oh yeah, I know what it was. I was saying earlier. So one thing that the Democrats I think have been doing wrong is, I think they're getting a little too bogged down in the yearbook stuff, because I think that that offers fodder to the Republicans to point at and say, look at the absurdity of this. Look at how desperate they are. They're talking about farting and and whatever else is in the yearbook. What do you think, Fred?
Have you well first of all, have you ever looked up Devil's Triangle? There is nothing in that. There is not one thing about a drinking game. I mean, may be, but there's nothing in the Urban Dictionary that says anything about a drinking game.
Right.
Yeah. The thing, the 4th of July, maybe.
Right.
He's got a point there. Who knows?
Right. No, I hear you.
But and the fact that, his friends later on, when they talk about his friends saying he was a belligerent drunk, one of the guys that was on MSNBC, the bald-headed guy, I'm not sure which one it was, the other day said, well, Mark Judge used to come in, and he was a drunk when he came in, and because the other guy was a bartender. And now he's a commentator, because they're all people from that area, and they're all rich kids that work the summers. He was like, yeah, Mark Judge was a drunk. And then he's like, yeah, here's who I hung out with. PJ, Judge, this other guy, and it was the same people that she said was at the party.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that was.
And that's where that attorney was going. If you watched, she was going there, and then they pulled her out. And that's when Lindsey Graham had to get in there and make a big statement. This is the worst thing of the whole. I tell you, Lindsey Graham doesn't have any daughters, but I bet you John McCain wouldn't have played that game.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, that was John.
I mean, he has a daughter. He understands that about girls, and boys, and sailors, and.
Yeah, that was John Heilman, by the way, who you were referring to on MSNBC the other day. I saw that clip, and he was talking about encountering Mark Judge back in his back when Heilman was a bartender. I assume going to college and whatnot. So yeah,
God, I'm glad we watched the same news.
I did see that clip. Yeah. All right, Fred.
Well, I'll let you get back to it, but I just wanted to say, this, if they can just pull a few good men, where they go after him until he gets pissed and then blows up.
Yeah. I'm skeptical that it'll get to that point, but it may. I mean, yeah, he is clearly rattled, but I don't know. I mean, do you think that'll happen? Do you think he'll actually really lose his temper?
He might.
Yeah,
that would be what I would do if I was a good prosecutor. I would just make him lose his temper.
It'll be exciting
because she sat there the whole time. I mean, you could see she was totally like, oh my God, I don't even want to be in this room.
Yeah.
And she was able to keep it all together. And he's just filibustering, talking about stuff that doesn't have anything to do with things that involved with anything.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Fred. Well, it looks like I think they're going to be
have a good one, boss.
They're going to be getting back. All right. Thank you for the call, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So it looks like, maybe they're not coming back yet. I'm keeping an eye on the live feed. Ben Dion just entered the room a moment ago. Yeah, but he's off somewhere. He's going to be, of course, the weekly Dion coming up at 6 p.m., as you can hear every Thursday here on WMNH 95.3 FM. I think they're starting to come back. I did want to get to this this email from Mike Doyle. I'm kind of trying to keep. Well, you know what? I should have pulled this up on a different screen so I could keep an eye on both. But Mike Doyle had sent me an email, and he actually references Fred in the email. This was yesterday during the show, but I didn't see it until now. All right, so quickly. So it's actually about a couple of different things, but I'm going to focus on so I can respond to the part where Mike specifically mentions the whole Kavanaugh thing. He said, send this to your guy in Philly who likes to take shots after the fact. Okay, referring to comments Fred made after a call from Mike. My point last week when I called was to be careful throwing around the rape accusation, which you did, because that is a word you can never get out from under, even if it's not true. Well, what I said was, I said that if her story is true, what Christine Blasey Ford describes in her story is an attempted rape. And I was very careful to say attempted. And I was also very careful to say if her story is true. But that is, I mean, that is what she describes. Because I remember the call that Mike is referring to. And, Mike was kind of talking about, well, in high school, everybody gets, you're trying to hook up with girls and whatnot. And what I said is, yeah, but what she describes is beyond that. I mean, yeah, in high school you're trying to hook up with girls and, maybe even you grope somebody inappropriately. And, if you're in high school, inappropriate groping is not necessarily something we want to revisit 36 years later. I would agree. But the problem is what she describes is not inappropriate groping. what she describes is an attempted rape, and that's what she described happening. But it looks like we're coming back. So we'll go back to I see Kavanaugh sitting down. Looks like he's still kind of trying to catch his breath, but I don't hear anyone talking yet. So just kind of keep the volume on that a little bit low. And I see Daryl Dion entering the room as well. But Daryl Dion, I've heard a lot recently on the morning show with Peter White. But Mike also said in his email, at this point, the accuser does not know when it happened, where it happened, and she never told anyone, not even a friend or relative. These other witnesses said it did not happen, yet we are still throwing around the rape word. Oh, here we go. They're coming back. Okay, I'm going to pull the volume up on this.
Just going to say, I started my last colloquy by saying to Senator Klobuchar how much I respect her and respected what she did at the last hearing, and she asked me a question at the end that I responded by asking her a question, and sorry I did that. This is a tough process. I'm sorry about that.
I appreciate that. I would like to add, when you have a parent that's alcoholic, you're pretty careful about drinking. And the second thing is, I was truly just trying to get to the bottom of the facts and the evidence, and I again believe we do that by opening up the FBI investigation, and I would call it a background check instead of investigation. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Senator Hatch.
Well, thank you, Judge. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. My friend from, I'd just like to say a few words. My friend from Arizona emphasized yesterday that we have before us today two human beings, Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh. They deserve, each of you deserves to be treated fairly and respectfully. We tried to do that with Dr. Ford earlier, and I think we succeeded. It's important that we treat Judge Kavanaugh fairly now, and it remains to be seen how that's going to work out. Judge Kavanaugh has been a federal judge for 12 years, and he's been a great federal judge on the second highest court in the nation. He's earned a reputation for fairness and decency. His clerks love him. His students, he teaches in law school as well, his students love him.
This is Orrin Hatch, Republican of Utah, by the way.
Monster, nor is he what has been represented here in these hearings. We're talking today about Judge Kavanaugh's conduct in high school.
All those guys were.
Yeah.
And even then,
apparently they learned nothing.
and as a freshman in college, I guess, as well.
Good point, yeah.
Serious allegations have been raised. If Judge
I couldn't believe it when I saw
committed
Grassley
sexual assault.
Oh, yeah.
30 years ago. Wow. I saw him. I go, I recognize that guy, and he's the same guy today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Orrin Hatch is the one who recently said, oh, she's confused, you know.
I think he thinks the American people are confused.
He might be confused. He's been around. He's like 130 years old. Not to be ageist, but
he shouldn't still be there.
Yeah. Well, he is on his way out. This is his last hurrah.
Good.
Porn star lawyers with facially implausible claims are driving the news cycle. I hate to say this, but this is worse than Robert Bork, and I didn't think it could get any worse than that. This is worse than Clarence Thomas. I didn't think it could get any worse than that.
I'd have to disagree with that.
This is a national disgrace, the way you're being treated. And in the middle of it all, we have Judge Kavanaugh, a man who until 2 weeks ago was a pillar of the legal community. There's been no whisper of misconduct by him in the time he's been a judge. What we have are uncorroborated, unsubstantiated claims from his teenage years. Claims that every alleged eyewitness has either denied or failed to corroborate. I do not mean to minimize the seriousness of the claims. Yeah, they've been serious claims, but the search for truth has to involve more than bare assertions. Like Dr. Ford, Judge Kavanaugh deserves fair treatment. He was an immature high schooler. So were we all. That he wrote or said stupid things sometimes does not make him a sexual predator. I understand the desire of my colleagues to tear down this man at any cost. I do understand it. But let's at least be fair and look at the facts or the absence thereof. Guilt by association is wrong. Immaturity does not equal criminality. That Judge Kavanaugh drank in high school or college does not make him guilty of every terrible thing that he's recently been accused of. A lifetime of respect and equal treatment ought to mean something when assessing allegations that are flatly inconsistent with the course of a person's entire adult life. With those comments, Judge, I'd just like to ask you a few questions, if I can, about how, and if you can be short in your answers, it'd help me get through a bunch of them, about how this process has unfolded. When did you first learn of Dr. Ford's allegations against you?
It was a week ago Sunday when Washington Post story.
Isn't that amazing? Did
That's
the ranking
amazing.
member raise these allegations in your one-on-one meeting with her last month?
She did not.
Did the ranking member raise them at your public hearing earlier this month?
No.
Did the ranking member raise them at the closed session that followed the public hearing?
She was not there.
Did the ranking member or any of her colleagues?
This is pretty. I'll pull that down for a second because this is pretty predictable. Obviously, he's asking him softball questions, but
Oh, yeah.
But I will say, I mean, Hatch, you know, to be fair, and I said on the show earlier, I watched her testimony. I find her believable and credible.
Right.
My instincts.
Was she
believe her.
emotional?
Yeah, and this appears to be very, very difficult for her. I will say, though, in all fairness, I mean, Orrin Hatch, what he points out is correct. We don't have any. They are just accusations at this point.
Guilt by association does not work.
The what?
Guilt by association.
Oh, guilt by association. Yeah, we don't have any.
I just want to know how it ultimately, through the years, affected his character. That's what I'm concerned about. Supreme Court justice has to be a man of character. And if he didn't bring character forward from those youthful times,
right?
That's my question.
Right.
You know, I mean, who drinking and carrying on as a high schooler and a college student? Absolutely.
Right.
But did he bring those forward? Is he better than that?
But also, too, I mean, there is a big difference between drinking and carrying on in high school and, you know, attempting to rape somebody.
Right.
Well, I tended not to go there because it's just an assumption. We don't know.
Well, we don't know, but I mean, but I'm saying that's what she describes.
Right.
So
right.
if we believe her, then that's pretty severe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it lends to his character.
Right.
And if he did perform those acts, do we want that as a Supreme Court justice?
Yeah.
I mean, really, answer the question.
Yeah, I
But
certainly don't.
I'm not gonna accuse him or.
Right.
Let's see how it shakes out.
Right. Right.
It'll. And you know what bothers me though, the speed with which they want it done.
Right.
Why are we on a rapid pace here?
They're voting tomorrow too, I believe.
Well, they want to.
They're going to vote tomorrow.
Yeah.
They want to for sure. Absolutely. ASAP.
Well, here's the thing. So I said earlier on the show, I think they have no choice politically, and this is just a political assessment. I don't think they have any choice but to ask the White House to withdraw him or to ask him to withdraw, and here's why. I think the Republicans are in a catch-22. If they don't get him confirmed by the midterms, they run the risk of not being able to get him confirmed at all.
Absolutely.
But if they rush it and do get him confirmed before the midterms, I think that's going to splash back on them so badly in the midterms.
Right.
Because then a lot of Americans are going to see that and going to say, look, they rushed him through just to get him through before the midterms. And, and a lot of us, we think the worst of this guy. Look what they did.
Right.
So it's going to actually harm them so much.
It doesn't matter what they do.
Right. So I think their best bet at this point is I think the president should come out and say, look, I'm not making any judgments, but I at this point am no longer comfortable with this nominee. And we're going to put someone else forward after the midterms and hope for the best for the midterms.
What's the likelihood of that?
Probably not very likely.
Yeah. Just from his tone from yesterday.
Yeah.
Just the Trump show.
Yes.
Press conference. I was
And how many
watching
times
that
has
yesterday.
how many times has he said we have to get this done by the midterms?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he's blabbed it out, so we all know what the goal is.
He knows what's coming.
Absolutely, he knows what's
Yeah.
coming. The end.
He has to.
Yeah.
And there's other states other races, congressional and Senate races that shouldn't be close, based on where they are, and,
Right.
and they're going to be very close.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Beto O'Rourke might actually win in Texas.
I think he's got a good shot.
Oh, I think he's got a great shot.
Yeah.
Hey, Willie Nelson's behind him. How could he lose?
That's true. And we have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed in the Afternoon. Who's this?
So, is it news that you have a call?
Is it what?
Is it news that you have a call, or do you get one of those every day?
Well, we haven't gotten a call from you in a while, Dave Ridley of the Ridley Report.
That's correct. I apologize.
Yeah, where you been?
Well, here in New Hampshire.
Oh, so you claim. Can you prove it?
No.
I didn't think
not
so.
over the phone.
Uh-huh. I didn't think you could. What's on your mind, Dave?
State Rep Brandon Finney.
Yes.
Dude has got a fire lit under his backside. Apparently, he's on a warpath.
Does he have third-degree burns?
No.
I'm suddenly concerned
No.
about him.
He's just I see him on Facebook all the time. You know he's gonna burn out eventually, right? But for now he's real active, and he's interesting because he is one of, I guess, 2 state reps who are Libertarian Party members.
Right. Huh. 2 or 3? I thought there were 3.
There were 3. I think the third one had to resign because he moved.
Oh. Yeah, you do have to kind of be in the state to do that gig.
Kinda.
Yeah. I guess. Okay, so
well, I think he's still the third one. I think his name is Stalkup, and I think he's still in state, but he just had to move out of his district.
So what's Brandon Finney been up to, and is he still a Satanist?
Oh, Finney, I heard that.
Yes.
I saw somebody write a post on a web forum that said he was a Satanist. Finney?
Finney, yeah. I've invited him on the show, but he won't come on unless we sacrifice a goat. No, I'm kidding
Did
about.
he really say that?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding about that. No, but he really is. Yeah, that was a big deal. I mean, that was like a year ago, maybe. But yeah, people made a big deal about that online. That he's. But I mean, he's a Levian. He's not like literally. He's not a worshiper of Satan. He's into Anton LaVey, I guess, and very anti.
I don't know. I think that the two are considered pretty similar. And yeah, that is a big deal. If that's true, that I'm surprised more eyebrows has not been raised over that.
Yeah, well, it all kind of blew over. I think people just figured, he's a libertarian. What are you going to do?
It's funny how, I guess if he's a Satanist, maybe when I say he'll burn out, maybe I'm meaning that literally, but what I was really referring to was just the high level of activity. The guy's got the thing he's got right now. He says this is one of like 10 or 12 things he seems to be doing, but he says, quote, "I have decided that I will be filing a constitutional amendment to make the New Hampshire legislature a nonpartisan body."
Oh, I saw that. Yes. Yes. I think that's an interesting idea. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Well, sometimes when people file a bill or a CACR like that, they're trying to get people talking.
Right.
And that's really all they're expecting to accomplish. Something like that, yeah. I mean, you'd have to have, it's like 2/3 majority or something like that of both houses. It has to be signed by the governor. Then it has to get 2/3 majority of people voting for it in a referendum. And so it would be difficult to get a majority even on something like that. But
yeah. I mean, personally, I don't think something like that has even a chance in hell. Get it? Because we were talking about Satan. I made a little joke there. A chance in hell. Get it? I'm very punny. You have to admit. All right. So,
but the other thing I don't like about it is that it like even if you did make it nonpartisan, if you look at the local government in New Hampshire, it's nonpartisan, but it's no better than state government, right?
I guess it depends.
Well, I mean, if you look at it if you look at your average local government in New Hampshire from a point of how pro-liberty it is, how transparent it is, Yeah. On average, they're not going to be any more transparent or pro-freedom than the state government is.
Right, yeah. I mean, government tries to be as untransparent as possible, generally, yes.
Well, and if you look at the state, if you look at the state government in New Hampshire, it's probably one of the most transparent governments on the face of the planet. As governments go, it's one of the least bad.
Yeah. Right.
So it's partisan, right? It's very clearly partisan, and
sure. Yeah.
So I think but if you look at the New Hampshire government and you compare it to the federal government, they're both equally partisan, basically. But the federal government it's 50, 60 times worse than the state government. I mean, the state government literally really is only about 2 or 3% as evil as the D.C. government.
I'm not sure how you quantify that, but that may be true, yes.
Well, I'll tell you, just anecdotally speaking, when I was about 10 years ago, I used to do this thing, I called them silent protests. And you can only do a silent protest if you do it alone, because otherwise you'll wind up talking to the person you're with. So I would go into government offices, I'd hear something bad that they did, and I'd walk in and I'd just hold a sign until they kicked me out, basically.
Yeah.
And actually, in a lot of cases, they wouldn't kick me out at all, and I had to leave on my own.
Right.
The idea was just walk in with a sign, see how long it takes them to kick you out or call the cops. And hand them a leaflet, right, that explains what your grievance is.
Right.
So I did this at the IRS office in Nashua and the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration office in Concord.
Yeah.
And so the two protests were almost exactly identical, right?
Yeah.
And the IRS arrested me.
They actually arrested you?
They had Homeland Security arrest me, and the DRA in Concord, the head of the DRA came out and shook my hand and addressed my concerns, thanked me for being there, and walked back into his office.
Well, that is, those are two very different experiences, no doubt. Wow. Very different experiences. No, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, Dave, listen, we're almost out of time. We've got another live show coming up, so we're going to be wrapping up in a minute. But I'll ask you quickly: have you been paying any attention to the Kavanaugh hearings?
No.
No.
Again, you're talking about imperial politics. I'm only interested in national politics. My nation is New Hampshire.
Yes, NH Exit. Yes. All right, Dave. Well, please, before we let you go, give the Ridley Report a plug, and anything else you'd like to plug.
Oh, thanks, RidleyReport.com.
Very nice. I give it an 8 because you can dance to it. They used to say that on American Bandstand. All right, thanks, Dave. Take care. All right, Dave Ridley leaves us from the Ridley Report, and Daryl, what's do you know what's Ben had to leave the room, but do you know what's coming up on your show?
Yeah, we're going to have Bill Cini of Manch Vegas Brew Bus.
Oh, I know who would be interested in in something like a brew bus. A gentleman named Brett Kavanaugh. Apparently, he's a bit of a drinker.
All day long.
Yes, yes. No, very good. So that's coming up at 6 p.m. right here on WMNH 95.3. By the way, have you seen the new website? The new WMNH website, WMNHradio.org.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's really cool.
Cool.
Yeah. It's been updated, and I think it was Brendan who did it, and he did a fantastic job. And did you hear any of yesterday's show, by the way?
No, I didn't, but Ben did give me a little heads up that there was some activity.
Yeah, it was the show really kind of ended with a bang.
What, Hopwood went crazy?
Yeah, Hopwood was very animated.
Well, who was he animated towards?
Gary Hopper and Eric Eastman, mostly Eric Eastman.
Okay.
Because we were talking about Kavanaugh, and those guys were. Well, Eric was kind of mocking the whole thing a little bit, which Hopwood didn't take too well and
kindly to it.
Yeah. And I actually didn't like what Eric did either very much, to be honest with you. I thought it was a little gross, but But, they're very pro-Kavanaugh and assuming that, that he's pure as the driven snow and that this is all.
Right-wing guys?
Yeah. And Eric, I think, is more libertarian. But anyway, yeah, so that's for anyone who wants to check it out. It is up and available at WMNHradio.org. It was quite the, it ended with Hopwood storming out and very angrily. It was probably the most angry I've ever seen him.
Well, from what I've seen of him, he can be emotional.
Yes.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
This was on a new level. I mean, actually, I fundamentally agree with Hopwood's point of view on this matter. But he did get a little carried away with the anger, and there was some language used that isn't really appropriate for. But so we won't be seeing him around here for a couple of weeks. Which is understandable. So anyway, everybody stick around for the weekly Die-On coming up next with Daryl here and, of course, his son Ben. And if you missed any part of today's show, this will be up in just a little bit at WMNHradio.org. And thank you, of course, to Fred Bonig from the weekly, Fred Bonig from the Daily Ripple. See, I'm getting daily and weekly mixed up now. Fred Bonig from the dailyripple.org for calling in earlier. And that's it. That's it for now. I'll talk at y'all a little bit later. Bye, everybody.